Hello, everybody. And today we have craniosacral fascial technique. And I know you're asking, what is craniosacral fascial technique? Well, it's the icing on the cake to the flow technique. Flow technique is fascia, lymph, and overall wellness. You've heard me talk about flow for the last 30 or 40 episodes. And today we have Holly and Kim from the CFT Global team here to instruct you, educate you about what the system is about. And if you are stuck in your case, this could be the piece that you're missing. So join us for today's episode of The Beats for the CFT, the missing piece in your case. Back to the Beats with Kelly Kennedy, and this week I'm so excited to bring two of my newest colleagues and friends on the scene with the world at large. When I was exposed to this technique, it was about 3 years ago. I had sent some clients in our local area and we got some amazing results. And I said in my mind, oh, I want to take that class. And you know, things happened, life happened, that I never got to take that class. And COVID happened. And I was so happy to see that they were teaching the class and they were teaching it locally and I could go to it. And enter Holly and Kim. And Holly and Kim are the teachers of this amazing technique called craniosacral fascial. I'm going to let you tell them a little bit of their background. But for those of you who know, I do a lot of flow technique. I do a lot of manual technique. I'm really involved with the dental work and the airways and so forth. And when I sat in this class for 5 minutes, I literally was like, first of all, these two ladies are so authentic and so amazing. I'm so excited for you guys to meet them. But also, this technique is the icing on the cake to the flow technique. Oh my gosh, this opens up the fascia in a different way. So I would like to introduce you all to Holly Steflik and Kim Sherlock of Craniosacral Fascial Technique Global, which we'll give you all their information at the end. So welcome, ladies.
Thank you,
Hi, Kelly.
So tell us a little bit. I know we'll start with you, Kim. I know your background was a little bit not in body work, right? Mm-hmm. You started this, I think, because of your own child or something, didn't you?
No, actually, it was probably around 2007. And I was sitting with a friend. We were watching our kids play sports or, on a field somewhere. That's all we used to do back then. And she was telling me that her son was being treated by Dr. Barry Gillespie, and that his results were remarkable. His asthma had resolved, learning issues, behavioral issues. And I'm watching this kid, like stellar athlete at this point, running on a field. And so she kind of said to me, you would like this. You should go. He teaches this work. And I was like, I don't know why she's saying this, because I had no background in medicine, no background in physical therapy or anything like that. But I had a real interest in health and wellness from more of an alternative natural approach. So I thought, okay, sure, I'll go learn how to do this. And then I could work on my kids or my friends. And that's what I did. So I went to his 3-day class. It was September of 2008. And
Dr. Barry Gillespie is the creator of the technique.
Yes.
Is a periodontist here in our local Philadelphia area that just has happened to create an incredible global technique that is now finally.
So he developed this work over 35 years ago. So I went to the class. I got it. I just started. I said, I'm going to go home. I'm going to buy a table. I'm going to just start doing this thing. And things started happening for my family and friends. And then they started referring people. I would be getting these phone calls about, this thing that you do. I was like, okay. And eventually people started having remarkable results. They were talking to their doctors, like down at some of our big teaching hospitals in Philadelphia. And Dr. Gillespie and I became friends. And at one point he took me aside. He's like, okay, Kim, you're going to need to get licensed, So I went to massage school. I got my license in massage therapy and body work, and I started teaching with him. And so just as an instructor on the floor, and then we developed a very, very good friendship. And when he decided that he wanted to retire from teaching, him and I had a conversation, and I said, if you don't want to go out in the world and teach this and travel to places where we were being requested, I will. And had the conversation with Holly. We had become friends at that point. And so we have been able to travel to South Africa and the UK and throughout the US. And it is just, we both have individual practices, but we really love the teaching because it's just so exponential that we can now teach you, Kelly, and then you have people coming in that you can help, and so on and so on. So,
and it's one of the techniques, honestly, that I've never seen such amazing quick results with something that I learned in a weekend.
Yeah.
Before,
And what's so fantastic is that, I was someone who had no background, and I have literally traveled the world now teaching this. And I have, a very full practice from newborns through the elderly and all different conditions. And I always just say to the students, if I can do this, you can do this. Right. And so we have people in our class who are parents of brain injured children who have no background, but they want to help their kids very consistently with this work, sitting next to orthodontists, chiropractors, neurosurgeons. And it's like, it doesn't matter because we teach it from a very beginner mind and in a very right brain experiential way that, everybody is on an equal playing field when they come in to learn CFT.
So we want to talk about CFT a little bit, but I want to get to Holly. And so Holly, you were a body talker, correct?
Yeah. I started out with, in body work. Maybe like 25 years ago, I went to massage school. And so I just, over the years, studied a lot of different types of, manual therapy, myofascial release, and then also became interested in the more energetic part of it, and became a body talk practitioner and instructor, and have been doing that for the last 15 years. And so I just kind of felt like there was something missing in my practice. And so I had heard of CFT from, other colleagues, and I don't know, I just I looked it up once or twice and then just kind of thought, oh yeah, it's just like another, I don't really need to know that. And then it was really a testimonial from a parent who had a child that was developmentally delayed, and they took him, he was around 2, to see Dr. Gillespie. And it was really her testimonial that I read that was just somehow really struck me. And I was like, I have to go take that class right now. And I did. And, same thing. I just, I came back and I started using it right away. And it was, addressing things that I had been seeing, some clients for 15 years, and,
right,
things were not resolving. So it was pretty miraculous and, and amazing that, how it works. And it was really easy for me to learn. I was a body worker, but it is easy to learn. And it's really right brain. And then, when you take the class, you experience it yourself. So you have 3 days of experiencing what it feels like in your body to unwind that fascial strain. And so you have the experience, and then, and then we teach you how to, how to feel it in the class.
So let's back up just a little bit, because some of them have heard what the fascial system is. I primarily talk a lot about regulation and lymphatics through the beats, but we've talked about fascia as the secondary nervous system. Why don't you each give a little, what does the fascia mean? What is that? Explain it in your terms to the lay person, practitioner, whoever is listening, because we know that they don't get a lot of schooling on the lymph or the fascia. So let's talk about the fascia and the craniosacral system, and and how these are tied together. What is CFT essentially?
Yeah, what's CFT? Yeah. Well, let me just say a little bit about CFT before I talk about the fascia. So CFT was developed by Dr. Gillespie, that Kim already said. He's a periodontist, and some 35 years ago, he was in practice and, seeing lots of people. And he actually himself had very, very poor health as a child and as a young adult. And he had, all kinds of health issues, sinus, headache. And, he wasn't getting any results from any, regular doctors. So he started, seeking out some more alternative therapies and seeing a chiropractor. And this chiropractor told him, your problem is that your cranial bones are restricted. And I mean, he was like, what does that mean? So he's started researching and studying with some of the osteopaths, and later with, John Barnes, and studying myofascial therapy. But he studied with Viola Fryman, who's one of the original osteopaths. And he really started taking these two modalities and merging them together, and starting to treat his patients who had lots of craniodental strain. He was seeing people with, TMJ, sinus issues, asthma, headaches, and he was seeing results. So, it's really, CFT is really a blend of craniosacral therapy. What most people hear of is CST, and, one of the major, Upledger is really well known for, the craniosacral therapy, and then it's also a blend of, myofascial release and John Barnes. So he, studied with both of those, systems, and then really, put them together to merge them. So that's really what it is. And it's such a tongue twister to have to say craniosacral fascial therapy, but that's what we call it, CFT for short. But that's what it is. It's really the merging of the fascial system with the craniosacral system. And he really felt like, you cannot address either system without looking at both. And it's kind of like, we'll get into it a little bit more once we talk about fascia. Let me say a little bit about fascia. Basically, fascia is the connective tissue that consists of like muscles, tendons, ligaments. There's superficial fascia, there's deep fascia, there's visceral fascia. And how I explain it to just lay people is like, if you have a piece of chicken, that's a raw piece of chicken, and you pull the skin up, you see all this white, webby, sticky stuff. And that's fascia right there. And that fascia runs through your body longitudinally, in some areas horizontally as well, but it's a web, and it wraps around. There just are layers and layers and layers and layers of fascia. And it wraps around every muscle, every organ, every endocrine, every body part, and down into the bone, the periosteum of the bone. And so if we were to take the skeletal system away, we would see, if we would see we could actually see who that person was just by the fascial system. So it's really what holds everything together. And there's some brilliant people out there, Tom Myers of Anatomy Trains, and then of course Gil Headley, who just does brilliant work on in dissection of fascia. If you want to get a good glimpse into what fascia looks like and how entangled it is in so creating the web, go to his website, Gil Headley, and you'll see a lot of his dissections. And we really share those in our class because you just don't have any idea how much fascia is in the body. When you're doing a dissection, you can cut through fascia, and there's just another layer and another layer and another layer. So it's really what holds everything together.
And
Does that
Kim,
make sense?
yeah, it does. Kim, can you answer what the craniosacral system is?
Right.
So we understand the fascia, so let's get the craniosacral system.
Right. So the craniosacral system are the structures of the brain, the spine, the sacrum, and you expand it out into the craniosacral fascial system because it lies within the whole fascial web, right? It's not just this own system unto itself. And what that does is it helps move cerebrospinal fluid, which is manufactured in the brain, bathes the brain down the spine out into the fascia. And the way that we know this to be true, and what Barry really stumbled upon to know to be true, because we used to think that it was this closed system, was the cerebrospinal fluid has been found in the fascia. So it's coming down the spine and it's going out into the body, right? So that's why we know that it's important to look at the body and the system as one. So that a lot of times we get the question, well, what's the difference between craniosacral and craniosacral fascial therapy? And the difference is in the fascial web, because we are always connected into the craniosacral system as we are working with the fascial web. Ultimately, it's all one.
Go ahead, Holly, say.
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah, that's the kind of question that we always keep like throwing out there in our class is we say you have one hand hooked into the craniosacral system through the occiput or the sacrum, and then your other hand is out in fascial land. And what we're asking is, is there fascial strain between my hand that's out in fascial land and my hand that's hooked into the craniosacral system? And that's really what we're teaching you, is to feel the fascial strain. And then we follow the innate wisdom of the body, which actually does know how to heal itself and unwind itself. And we as the practitioners are sort of just making that observation so that the innate wisdom of the body can unwind itself and do its thing. So we're really following.
But what you just said, we have to exemplify, because what you just said is the brilliance of the technique. And we really need people to understand what you just said. That is so brilliant, because it's not a little thing that you're just hooking up the craniosacral and the fascial system. And then as a practitioner, creating an awareness because the innate system already knows it. You're not creating awareness. You're creating what was the word used? Not awareness.
We're making an observation. Yeah.
Observation. And the power of observation is what sets the intention, correct? For the system to connect, to allow the innate intelligence to know what to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it does know what to do. And so that's why the work is so brilliant. We'll talk later about infants, but the infants, we know how to heal ourselves and unwind. And we offer a possibility that might not have been, seen before by the body or by the person. So it's really quite, it's so non-invasive, and we can't hurt anybody with it. So it works for so many different, so many different conditions.
So if nobody's had craniosacral before, can one of you explain what the craniosacral feels like? And you're saying the word web a lot, and you're saying unwind. And I think these are things that we understand because we've done craniosacral work. And when I show up your class, it's like, oh, I got it. But if I had never heard those terms before, I don't know as if I'd necessarily understand what that's like. Because the first time I ever sat for a craniosacral session 25 years ago, I was like, are you going to do anything? Is there something going on? Are you doing something? I'm paying you at the end of this, right? So you're going to do something, right? I was used to deep tissue massage. Can you speak about that a little?
Yeah. You want to, or you want me to?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, Kim and I have both taken craniosacral therapy with Upledger. It's really great too. And I'm so glad that I have that experience of craniosacral. I was sort of the same way. I took it 20 years ago and I was like, well, that's interesting, but I'm never going to do that because it was just there. It was so nothing happening. There was. And then maybe like 7 or 8 years ago, I took it again with a brilliant teacher and I really appreciated it. But I think the difference is with the craniosacral therapy is we're not really directly linking into the fascial system. And like Kim said earlier, there is so much fascia within the craniosacral system, which is around the brain. There's, the dura, the pia, the arachnoid, which are all layers of fascia that protect and surround the brain and the spinal cord. And so we have to be hooking into the fascial system. Otherwise, what we see if we're just doing craniosacral therapy and there's a lot of fascial strain in the body, we don't see those cranial bones and the sacrum resolving or going into a balanced state until the fascial strain is unwound. And so that's really this is what we see with the infants, is that really the fascial system, because they've been in utero and fetal life for a long time and they're like in a small space, that the fascial system really overrides the craniosacral system. And we really have to get in there and unwind the fascial system in order for the cranial bones to be able to settle into place and to work properly.
What does that mean, the cranial bones do they move? I'm asking that kind of rhetorical. I know the answer, but I want the lay people to understand what the cerebral spinal fluid is doing. Yes, it but it pushes out into the fascia. But what's its primary? How does that work? Anatomy 101, cerebral spinal fluid.
Go, Kim.
Kim, take it away.
So yes, the bones do move. So there are sutures in the brain that you can see, or in the bones that you can see. And with its gentle expansion and contraction, it helps move the cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, so why is that important? It's important because it helps nourish the brain and the body, and it helps detoxify. So we need to have this movement. We talk about the expansion and the contraction that we feel when we do this work, and that's helping move the fluid so that you don't have stagnation. When we feel that there's stagnation, and we use the term tightness in the body, tightness in the system, a tight brain cycle. We can talk a little bit about what that is. People have a lot of different conditions. So when we see brain injuries, when we see migraines, when we see concussions, babies with a lot of different issues that have had traumatic birth, these people have a very tight system. So when we open it up and they're able to get more optimal flow of cerebrospinal fluid, conditions can resolve.
And give me so beyond just, birthing issues or head injuries, what other kind of things have you seen CFT help resolve? headaches, obviously.
What other types of conditions? Well,
Yeah.
okay. So if we start with the infants, we see the typical infant conditions. So general fussiness, baby doesn't sleep, baby doesn't poop, breastfeeding issues, issues with latch, tightness. You know, some moms will just say, my baby is tight, you know, and they can sense that in their baby, a lot of arching. If we miss that as an infant and we're moving into toddler and children, then we can see things like asthma, learning issues, behavioral issues. You know, and then there's things out there like strabismus, you know, the eyes aren't lined up. We see things like earaches. We see mouth breathing. Then you get into your teenage years. It could be anxiety, depression, migraines, headaches. You know, then you add some concussions in, and then you're really pushed over the edge. Adults, same thing. We see a lot of the headaches, the anxiety, depression, sleep apnea, asthma, digestive issues. I mean, it goes on because there isn't one system in the body that isn't affected or wrapped in fascia. So if we free the fascia, you can gain mobility, you can gain function physically, and you know, with the musculoskeletal system as well as brain function. So a lot of times the things that we hear from people is they say, I feel like the brain fog has lifted. You know, I can't quite put my finger on it, but I feel like more at peace. They can handle stress better because we're also affecting the nervous system, which you can't heal if your nervous system is jacked up all the time, right? So we're also addressing helping them calm their nervous system and get into a more parasympathetic state.
You know, those of that know me, I don't sleep very much. I'm not a huge like, oh my God, I got to get my 10 hours of sleep. Like I'm a 5 to 7 hours and I'm pretty good for most nights. Mm-hmm. Like how long is the class? 3 days or 4 days?
It's 3.
Okay. Let me tell you, 3 days of class feels like 7 days of therapy. By the 3rd day, I was like, oh my God, please don't anybody touch my body. I'm processing so much. I am so done with work. And I mean, I loved it. It was great, but I slept from like 10 o'clock at night until 7 in the morning for like the next 3 weeks. I had never slept that much in my life, honestly. And I was like, obviously my body's healing because all my body wants to do is go to sleep. And we had just started to unwind my scar and some little things. I had some big shifts that happened as a result of that class in just September. I can't even believe it was just September and we're in the end of January. And this whole thing has changed my scope, not my scope, but my approach in the body, because there's nobody lays on my table that doesn't have a little CFT involved in my
everybody needs it,
because you have to unwind these tensions. Can you talk about the fascial tensions for a moment, Holly, to get people to understand why they happen and what they are?
Yeah, well, I mean, people always ask us like, oh, so does CFT work for this condition or that condition? And what we always say is if there's fascial strain involved with that condition, then we are going to affect that condition by unwinding the fascial strain. So, I mean, it really starts in fetal life from being in a tight, cramped space. And then if you have, we haven't even gone down this rabbit hole, but if you have any kind of oral restriction, like a tongue tie, lip tie, buccal ties, the condition of the tongue is going to set the stage for how our palate develops and our cranial bones. And that's a whole nother podcast, which we'll talk about a little bit more maybe later. But so we start out in fetal life with these like with fascial strain, and we don't really see babies or children unless they get referred to us. Like people just aren't out getting their infants CFT or their children CFT. But if we could kind of start with a bit of a clean slate, because what we say with fascial strain is that we unwind layers of fascial strain, and it's like peeling an onion. Like we say, we're peeling the layers of the onion, and when that layer is gone, another layer comes forward. So when you get an adult on the table that's 50 years old, you have a lot of fascial strain to unwind, and those that strain comes from fetal life, the condition of their oral function, and their cranial bones, but accidents, injuries, surgeries, medications, any kind of dental procedure that they've had done, anything that puts strain into the fascial system creates our fascial onion that has to be addressed. So
it's trauma.
Yeah.
It's trauma on a physical level, and it's also trauma on the emotional level. So a lot of times, we'll take an intake and we'll kind of get an idea of what someone's history is. But the truth of the matter is we don't really even need to know that, because we're just going to feel into the body. We're going to feel into the strain, and we're going to release it as it comes up. And a lot of times you might say to someone, you feel some strain coming from their right knee or something, and they'll be like, oh my gosh, I didn't even tell you that, this happened to my right knee or something. We can feel it. That's what we teach our students to do, is how to feel the strain and then how to follow the body to unwind it.
And the fascial strain, when you're unwinding it, what can occur for that person? Because like we in class, which is great, you do one side of the body, then you do the other. And I was like, really? Like, we can't do both sides of the body on the same day? Can't we please? Because I know how I'm going to feel when I leave here.
Well, you mean when you're a demo, but when you're on the table, you have freedom to work with your partner as you want. But yeah, because the demos could go on forever, and everybody's always like, pick me. So what you can feel. So first of all, you're fully clothed in a session. Okay. And the first thing that we do is we put our hands on your head and we feel for what is called the brain cycle, which to me is just such brilliance to have as a practitioner. And it's our tool to feel how much tightness there is around the system. So I mentioned already,
part of the learning process. That is a very good part of the learning process.
Yeah.
How to feel these subtle energy shifts in the body that are physical, but are subtle.
That's right. So the brain has an inherent motion that expands and contracts, and that we will teach you how to feel that, the expansion and the contraction. And we're timing it, and we're feeling for the quality of it, the symmetry of it, the amplitude of it. And that tells us how the system's running. Okay. So if we put our hands on you and there is no cycle, it's just stuck, or it's very, very quick like this, we know that something is contributing to that stuckness, to that tightness. And we've got to then find, where is this strain coming from, so that we can free this up. Okay. So we call that the brain cycle. So that is, I think, a very important piece as a practitioner, to be able to feel that. For me, it always confirms that something has happened if I do the cycle and it's tight, and then I open it up and I feel that. But ultimately, it's what the client is going to feel as far as their benefits. But there's a correlation between what I feel and the quality of the cycle and how they feel, with as far as benefit from CFT.
Right.
Okay. So we start with that, and then we start feeling, okay, so we know that there's tightness, and then where is that coming from? And so we will kind of assess, and we'll feel the strain. Sometimes to the client, it may feel like nothing is happening, but underneath our hands, we can feel the shifts. Okay. Other times the body can move. It can be like a gentle unwinding or a stretching, but it's gentle. It's never forced or manipulative, because we're following their body as to how they want to release, and just supporting that.
It kind of looks to me like two people are dancing together.
There can be, it can be that kinetic. And then at other times it can be like I said, it doesn't look like anything's happening. Right. And then that's why it's kind of fun when they come back and they're like, oof, I slept for 10 days or, whatever because detox is real, right? So the tissues hold toxins. As we release the tissues, the toxins get released, and they have to make their way out. Sometimes that's not fun. Yeah. So you need to, we say drink water, Epsom salt baths, and just work through that. It's something happened, and it's good, even though it may not feel good at the moment. And that's
flow.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's not always the case. Sometimes they can just start feeling benefit without that detox. Everyone responds differently.
And I want to add in there the emotional piece too, because, everything that comes into our body, if it doesn't get sorted out, through other systems, then so all the emotions we have all the emotional, part there, that, the fascial system is big. So when the liver and the gallbladder are working at nighttime to process everything that's come in, if they don't know what to do with it, then they just put it in the fascial system somewhere, or in the muscles, or in, even in organs. And so, we see emotional release happen on the table as well. And a lot of times people don't even know what it's about. They have an emotional release and they don't even know why, or what they're not associating it with a particular accident or surgery or story. So we see that too. And I think especially with kids, because they're so less inhibited than adults are, that, I have kids that'll just start, just like a little tear will come down their face, or they'll be sad. And, and we honor that process and let it happen. And, and then we move on, and they've released that, emotional piece within the fascia, and that's gone. And we don't have to have a big story about it. It doesn't have to be a big dialogue about it.
And so the people are clothed, they lay on a table, they were working with a practitioner. And how long is a session approximately?
It's like 45 minutes to an hour.
And what can most people expect? Like if I walked in and had, I don't know, let's say I felt great. Let's say I walked in your office, I felt great. And I said, okay, I'm here to do CFT. Mm-hmm. What can I expect as a result of that as I start to unwind beyond the detox?
Well, that's funny because people do that all the time. Especially if you get like a friend or family member and they say, oh yeah, no, I don't have anything wrong. No, really, you're like 45, 50, 60, 70 years old. You have no pain in your body at all. Nothing's ever happened to me. Yeah. And then, you just touch them and they, go into like, oh my God, I had no idea that was so, oh yeah, I had, dental surgery last week. So, people have such low body awareness, honestly. And if you're not in the business of, health, healthcare, and especially something like this, then you really don't know. And we just we become master copers, right? At addressing pain, emotional trauma, stress from our, relationships, family, money. I mean, COVID, for God's sakes. I mean, we just have to do what we have to do. And it becomes actually unconscious. So depending on how aware the person is, but we find it. We can find it in a snap. And,
is there anybody that shouldn't do CFT? I mean, honestly.
I mean, Barry would say everybody needs CFT because everybody's been a baby inside, and had fetal life. And, but, there are certain conditions that we definitely want to be, mindful of, but most of all, any kind of brain shunt. We wouldn't want to, do CFT on those people.
You don't want to unwind the brain shunt. That makes sense.
We don't want a brain shunt to come out. No.
Yeah, that's not a good thing.
So fortunately, I've never had anybody. Well, I have had people ask, but yeah, it's not a real common thing. But yeah, that's really the only thing that we.
Yeah. And this question really stems from my own pure curiosity. So, as I was sitting in class, I was thinking, okay, so everybody, I agree. If we could get kids before they have an issue and like they come out of utero and then they go have a CFT appointment or 5 in the next 5 weeks, we could probably prevent a heck of a lot of things in their future, and I think like myself, like I was on crutches pretty much my entire high school career for my ankles because I played basketball and volleyball. But I think back and I was like, well, I wonder if maybe I was in utero, somehow both my ankles are twisted and now I have just weak fascial things. Because even to this day, when I sit in lotus style, that's still an issue. So that's what I'm coming to Kim for next week. But my point is that, is there like, why all of a sudden, do you think this has been going on forever that we are born with fascial tensions? Or do you think maybe when we were more indigenous living and we worked in the fields and stuff, we allowed our bodies to unwind better?
Oh, that's such a good question.
Mm-hmm, it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, through the years, we haven't even discussed like the tongue tie issues and the genetic mutations that have happened. But yeah, if we were living outside, we would be completely different. Yeah. I mean, the development of our oral, tongue stuff, we would be chewing on, meat and sticks and berries and, if you know Weston Price's work, I mean, yeah. Okay. So he was a dentist. He did all that research back in the 30s and presented it all. And we truly indigenous people, we see them with beautiful spines, amazing, face structure, amazing cranial bones, straight white teeth. And, yes. So yeah, definitely. It's the introduction of, what we were introduced to, the sugar, the processed foods. We all just sit in our houses all day with the heat cranked up and, we don't do anything.
Carriers. I mean, even the Moby wraps, like I carried stuff around in a Moby wrap. And I think back now, knowing what I know about fascial strains, and I'm like, oh my God, no more Moby wraps. Like let your kid move around and let him. like wiggle and move and like, and we just got a puppy and I see this dog constantly like moving and shaking. I'm like, look, she's unwinding her stuff. That's great. Keep unwinding. But so there could be a point in our future as we enlighten that we might not need to have CFT right away as we're born, because then we allow the child to unwind. But in this day and age, essentially everybody needs it. And
I don't think we're going to living outside. I think we're going to being inside more. So that is, there's a couple of different, like MoveNat and GMB Fitness. Those are awesome. Like, mobility, being outside and doing natural movement in nature, that how we would be if we lived outside.
Right. And I would imagine you could do this on animals, and
I do it on my cat. I have a video doing it on my cat. Yeah.
I mean, animals have fascia too. So
I worked on a horse the weekend after your class. Actually, I worked on my friend's horse, and it was the craziest thing ever, because he started kicking his foot out, and Carrie was like, "Oh my God, look at that!" I was like, "I know, he's working it out. This is so cool."
Right.
It was a little scary, I have to be honest, because I hadn't touched a horse in like 30 years in that way. So I was like, okay, we're just going to see how they unwind. Ooh. But it was wonderful. It was wonderful. So I know that the dental component is an entire podcast all in itself. And I understand that y'all are going to be part of a dental summit coming up in this year by Siobhan Sarna, which is exciting that you both are going to be on that. But can you just speak to that a little bit? Because we have my first person on my podcast I interviewed was a biological dentist. And about every third to fifth show, I have somebody on from the biological dental world and understanding that. And you are part of that piece, because for me, we have a lot of dental appliances. We have a lot of airway situations. We have bite issues. We have orthodontistry, braces, and
trauma. Yeah. So we look at, when we're looking at babies right out of the gate, we are looking at their oral function and what's happening with their tongue. And the telltale sign of a lot of this are issues with breastfeeding, right? So we want the tongue to be resting on the roof of the mouth, lips sealed, and breathing through our nose. I mean, that's optimal. That's what we all want to be doing, and swallowing properly. If the baby has a restriction with their tongue or their lip, and when I mean a physical restriction, so they have a tie, that may need to be addressed, right? So, I mean, Holly and I are not tongue tie providers or anything like that, but we've seen enough that we might be able to point moms in the right direction and educate them about where this is heading. So if that does not get addressed and that tongue is not able to get on the roof of the mouth, which is going to form a nice wide palate, okay, then that can later lead to a high palate, pressing up into the sinuses, distorting the cranial bones, distorting the orofacial bones. So not only aesthetically are things not going to go well, but also just physically, because if you're breathing through your mouth because the tongue's not up and you're not nasal breathing, that can affect the whole trajectory of health down the road, because we need to be breathing through our nose for, lots of different reasons. The air gets moisturized, it gets filtered, you create nitric oxide. So that's a whole nother podcast too, is just talking about proper breathing, which is starting to get out in the mainstream, which we're pretty excited about. But where does it start? It all starts with that tongue. So we go in and we help release the tightness in the oral structures, under the tongue, on the tongue, in the TMJs. In older people, every tooth has fascial strain. Dental surgeries, like you said, all of the things that we do with braces and the appliances that are going in now, that restricts brain motion. Okay, we could feel right then if someone's been to a dentist, if someone's wearing an appliance, if that's restricting this expansion and contraction. So that's why we love to work with dentists, and particularly dentists who are going to understand the craniosacral fascial component to what they're trying to do. It's not just about straightening the teeth, right? We've got to address the structures at large, and then we've got to address this whole craniosacral fascial system, because I have seen people just completely wrecked from braces, from appliances, and all different kinds of contraptions in their mouth. So,
which is why you both got trained as myofunctional therapists.
So correct? We studied, we thought we were starting to attract people in the integrative, holistic, orthodontic world, dentistry world, myofunctional therapists, and Holly and I thought this is a big piece, because if we release the strain, if there's a tongue tie release involved, whatever, but people continue to do the same habits of having their low tongue posture, lips open, breathing through, people don't know. So we've got to retrain, and it's like physical therapy for the mouth, for the proper breathing, so that they can move forward, you know, with everything released and proper patterning.
I don't know the answer to this, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you remember how many muscles there are in the face?
There are, no, I can't say.
It's like over
hundreds,
200, right? Mm-hmm. And I just want people to be aware of that, because I don't think people are aware of that. Like if their shoulder was sore, they'd run to the massage therapist and get it worked out. Nobody thinks about their jaw being sore, or, you know, my tongue is a little tight. I can't stick my tongue out all the way. I can't put my tongue on the roof of my mouth. I mean, these are such important things that I've gotten to the point where in studying embryology, where we start as a fascia and a tongue. There's something to this, folks. Yeah. So I really want people to understand that if we start that way, if that's how we develop, we want to make sure that that develops the most optimal way possible, because structure and function go together. The body can't function unless there's proper structure.
Right. Right. So I would just, you know, for anyone listening, where is your tongue right now? Is your tongue on the roof of the mouth, the tip, the middle, the back? Is it up there? And most people.
And if you have any restriction, you may not be able to get it there.
So that you may have to address that.
Yeah. So if you have a tongue tie, and gosh, so many of us do, you know, that people don't even know that. It's just,
I missed Silas's until after your class. And I went home, was like, how the heck did I miss this? Oh my God.
So we've seen, you know, just after learning what we've learned from that world of integrative orthodontists and tongue tie and lactation consultants and everything, we have the people that come in and let's just take their kid, you know, diagnosed with ADHD. They don't sleep. They're up all night. They're wired. They can't focus. They have bad breath. They have cavities. They have reflux. It's like, you just start checking these boxes, and what does it come back to? It comes back to mouth breathing. Why are they mouth breathing? It may be because there's tightness in the sinuses and they can't breathe through their nose. So that's where we come in as the body worker and help with the CFT. And then we can also help educate and guide parents or people to other practitioners or doctors that may be able to help them if that's the route where they want to go to really get to the bottom of those problems. Because the end stage of all this is sleep apnea. And I cannot tell you how much sleep apnea that I see here, you know, and then you got to go do the CPAP. But meanwhile, you know, your gastro system, your cardiovascular system, your brain, everything is being affected because you're not getting the proper amount and the proper quality of oxygen. So,
and oxygen and water is what it's all about in the body. Yeah. And that wins.
So we love to riff on that. But you know, it's head to toe. It really is. It's you know, addressing so many different things in the body, and you really don't always know. Like Holly said, someone may come in and say, I have migraines, and okay, that's great. We're still going to treat the body as a whole, and we're going to see how the body wants to heal and in what time that body wants to heal.
And go ahead, Holly.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, you know, I don't think that people think much about the frenulum, which is the tissue underneath the tongue. That's what it is fascia. It's connective tissue. And, you know, if you just go in and put a search into Google of like the fascial pattern, or the train of the tongue goes all the way down to the big toe. And so why CFT is important for, you know, anybody that's going to have a tongue tie release is that if that fascia is really tight underneath the tongue, when we unwind it, it brings the fascia more forward so that they get the most optimal release from the provider. And so we always want people to have, you know, CFT or body work before a release and after a release, because after there's a whole new coordination pattern matrix that has to get sorted out with the whole musculoskeletal fascial system and start and reorganize again. So,
and that's where that re-education comes in too, right? Yeah. Because now everybody can have new information. There's better circulation of the information. And you can all see why I fell in love with Holly and Kim when I met them, because they're right on the track with our tribe of knowing that we don't treat conditions. We get the autonomic nervous system to do its job, and we unhinder it, if that's the right word, to get the blockades removed from the autonomic nervous system at the level of the craniosacral system, at the level of the fascia with the CFT. Right. And so there's a lot of people listening to this going, oh my God, I want to go take their class. Tell them there's 2 classes coming up in March and June, right?
Yes.
So let's talk about them. March 5th, 6th, 7th is in North Carolina.
Chapel Hill, North Carolina in March. And then 5th, 6th, and 7th. And then we will be in Kansas City, Missouri, and that will be in June, 4th, 5th, and 6th. So if you are interested in the details, you can go to our teaching website is Craniosacral Fascial Therapy.com, and you can click through to trainings and look at the details and register there. If anybody is interested in experiencing CFT for a session, I am in Westchester, Pennsylvania. My website is kimsherlock.com. Holly is in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and she's hollysteflik.com. And Kelly, you are in North Wales.
Yes, I'm in North Wales, Pennsylvania. And Sarah and I are both trained in it now. And so you know our website because you're on it. So find us.
Right. So you can get us through all those places. You can also, if you want to learn more about the whole approach, GillespieApproach.com is Dr. Barry Gillespie's website. He has a ton of videos, a ton of information there, articles. And there's also a Facebook page where you could kind of connect with other people who have trained or are interested in CFT. And that's Gillespie Approach as well.
And right now the class is open for anybody, correct? Like you can be a parent and take this class. You can be a practitioner.
Oh yeah. We don't have any, you don't have to have any credentials at this point to come. You will, receive a certificate of attendance.
And you get CEUs if you're a massage therapist, right?
You get 23 CEUs, yes, and CBTMB. And we are hoping at some point this year to have our infant class. So you need to take the foundations class if you do want to take the infant training. Infant training is awesome. It's 3 days.
We can't wait for COVID to be over just so we can have the infant training.
It's his babies. We bring babies in and we round robin babies for 3 days. So you will actually be working on babies. And it's an amazing 3 days. So we have a lot of people interested. That is a limited, we only take 12 students for that. So if you want to take the foundation and get in on the infant, jump on that when you see that posted.
So I just want to ask one more question of you both. And so just if you, and again, I put you on the spot, but that's your new, my new friends, but you'll learn I do that a lot. So just come up with like, what is one thing you'd like to tell the world from what you learned of CFT, from everything that you know about the body? It doesn't have to be just about CFT. Like, what is the message you want to get out to the world? That you have the opportunity, let's say every single person in the planet is going to sign up. You're going to have 76 million, 100 million people listen to you tomorrow, whenever this posts. What do you want them to know?
I want them to know that this may be the missing piece. This may be what they've been looking for. Okay. And the thing that I hear most from my clients is, why don't we know about this? Right. And it's so frustrating to me sometimes to hear their journeys, and that, it's like we're the last hope sometimes. Right. And their concussions resolved, the migraines they've had for 20 years resolved, their kids can focus in school. And it's just like, it's so simple, and it should just be known, and it should be out there. And it could be a missing piece, maybe not the piece, but it could be a missing piece to your health. Yeah,
totally agree.
Thank you.
Well, Kelly, I was thinking, like, as you were talking about the nervous system, like that's like kind of like if we zoom way out, that's really what we're trying to do, is to affect the nervous system, put our person back into parasympathetic mode, because that's where healing and growth happens. You have to be in rest and relaxation, healing and growth, in order for your body to repair itself. And I think that so many of us are just in this constant state of sympathetic mode, fight or flight. So CFT is addressing the nervous system through the cranial, all the 12 cranial nerves. And we have a very, special technique for the vagus nerve, which has so much to do with the parasympathetic nervous system. So like, I would say, like, everybody has nervous system dysregulation. Can we help you regulate your nervous system through CFT? And okay, that's my one thing. But I have to just add, like, my favorite thing has been, like, I'm obsessed with, like, oral function. And so like, I'm just like, can't like study enough about the tongue and the palate and how, why do people not know about the tongue? And that it is the key to, you know, not only aesthetics of your cranial bones and your face and how you look, but it's all about how your airway is going to develop. You know, how is your maxillabone and your mandible going to develop? How are your teeth going to come in? You know, it's so much for me about like that piece of the tongue and getting the tongue into the correct spot and getting correct breathing, nasal breathing going on, that I really want people to know about.
Ladies, this has been awesome. And I am so excited that you were on this today, because I really hope that this stimulates the world to get to know you and put you on all sorts of other podcasts for your future, because I agree. That was my takeaway after that weekend. Not enough people know about you. What the hell's going on? Why don't more people, and my colleagues in particular, know about this technique? Because this is an incredible technique that's so simple, so easy to understand, so easy to feel, especially if you're a body worker, and get such profound, profound results for people so simply. Yeah. And I thank you both for your devotion to teaching it. It's just absolutely incredible. And I really want people to understand that that's our message to you, is that your body is the healing capacity. That's it. You need to learn how to access it. And that's what practitioners like us do. And I appreciate that they shouted us out, but there are a lot of other practitioners across the world that have taken their technique. So don't hesitate, if you are listening to this and you don't live in one of those 3 areas we talked about, to reach out to Kim and Holly so that they can help you navigate those waters. Or perhaps you should be the one taking the class so you can be the practitioner in your area, because this does need to be out there. This needs to help people so that we're really preventing illness instead of trying to, you know, clean up a big mess at the end, whenever the end is, you know, when finally somebody's like, okay, I'm at that desperate end of my rope. Now I'll do CFT or holistic medicine, biological medicine, and see if it works. And we all feel like if you had just done this on the first approach, you would have saved yourself a ton of money, first of all, and a ton of time, and had a lot more joy.
Yeah, joy. That's right. I also want to mention that we are so appreciative of being on your podcast. First of all, we want to offer to your listeners a $50 discount off of our tuition. So if they choose to register and they just mention the word BEATS, we will honor them with a $50 discount. And there's also some early bird discounts available. So we would love for you to take advantage of both. And we'd love to see you in class.
And I would just say that the price of admission is worth just the treatment alone. If you never do anything with the technique, but you go take the class and you get 3 days of 3 days of intensive care, it's absolutely worth the price, honestly. Yeah. So thank you all for listening.
We'll see you soon.
See you soon. And thank you for sharing this, everybody, letting the world know about CFT Global. See you there.
Okay.
Bye.